I hope the exam was okay for all of you. Any of you have any comments, any questions, any concern about the exam paper or anything? How was the exam paper? Did you find it easy, hard, too long, too short?
I was surprised by the exam.
You were surprised by the exam?
Yes, sir.
It was my hardest subjective exam ever, sir, of my life.
You know, exactly similar looking paper.
So, that day I got the meaning why you were saying to make short notes and cheat sheet. Because I was turning the pages ups and down. Before also I have given.
I mean, I told you everything, right? And if you don't follow my instructions, then what will happen, right?
But before this also I have given open notebook test, but the questions were too direct. But here the question was little tricky. So yes.
Hey, you are here to become. See, objective is not to test. I mean, what you can memorize and what you can reproduce from elsewhere, right? I am here to ensure that all of you become sharp engineers who learn skills and know how to use those skills. Yeah, I heard that. Okay, the toughest exam of your life. I hope the same doesn't happen in the next exam. Okay. But if you see, I mean, everything was given to you. There were, I mean, nothing, I mean, which was twisted or complicated. You had all the formulas, all the notes, everything available with you. All you need to know was what to use where. Right? So yes, that is what, I mean, in real world, you actually are going to do. In real world, I mean, nobody is going to ask you to, when you go and join a company, say you start working for Airbus tomorrow, okay. Airbus will not ask you to go and memorize things and come back and reproduce. Right? They will say, okay, look, we are facing this particular problem. How do you solve it? So now, I mean, when you have to solve those kind of problems, and even your thesis work, I mean, you will probably do something similar. Your advisor will give you a problem, which, I mean, nobody would have solved before you. So now, I mean, using all the skills that you have learned across all the courses that you are doing, you should be able to solve the problem. So Sachendra, I mean, I would also want to know, I mean, why did you find it so tough? Was there anything in that which was not taught to you?
No, sir. So initially for 1 hour I struggled, then I got all the answers. But sir, the interconnection between the various formulas, it was hard to imagine because non-dimensionally it's very difficult to get the gist of it. Like we are originally used to using dimensional terms like power, thrust, whereas when it comes to coefficients, it gets a little confusing, sir.
No, I don't think there is any confusing. They are exactly same thing. Only there is a factor missing.
Sir, a little confusing.
I mean, there is absolutely no difference. Thrust coefficient and thrust are exactly same thing.
Yes, sir. Now I get it, sir.
Yes.
Now I get it, sir. But
yes.
Initially, sir, it was hard.
Right. So only trick in the entire paper was to realize which formula to use for question number 1. After you do that, I mean, everything was simple, straight application of formula. Nothing complicated or twisted.
Sir, for question number 1, it took me 1 hour, sir. And
why?
rest of the exam.
Why? It was super duper easy. Everything was given to you. The formula was also there.
Yes, sir. To find out the second equation, that was very tough to find. That from theta twist the equation from blade element theory. That
exactly,
was
right. So blade element theory was taught in good detail, right? Yeah. And especially, see, I mean, there is a big hint given in the question saying that, I mean, theta 7.5 is given to you.
Yes, sir. It
right?
took some time.
So, I mean, there was a ready-made one-line formula, the simplest possible formula, and you simply solve it as a quadratic equation.
Exactly, sir.
Right. And after that, I mean, everything was just application of formula. So, I mean, but I hope you had good time. I mean, putting your brain to good use.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I mean, see, frankly speaking, I mean, ideally, I would have allowed you as much time as you want because time is not an issue at all. Okay. But then, I mean, you have 3 other exams, and I cannot ask you that, okay, you come for my exam. And normally there are UG students also in the course. So they may have some other exams. So I cannot ask you that, okay. So in Maryland, my advisor, Professor Chopra, he taught me helicopter dynamics. I mean, I had 4 courses on helicopters, but helicopter dynamics was taught by Professor Chopra. So his exam style was very simple. In the morning, 9 o'clock, he will give you the question paper. And he will say, you take it, go, either you sit in the classroom and solve it, or you can go at your desk and work it there. And you have till 9 p.m. in the evening to submit it back. So ideally, I would have also liked to do the exam in exact same manner. But like I said, I mean, there is too much of constraint on us. But I don't think, I mean, the question is lengthy to require you to take a lot of time to solve it. It's all about, I mean, how quickly you figure it out. And it would not have taken you a lot of time to figure out. I mean, if you had prepared a nice cheat sheet of formulas of what is where in 1 or 2 pages. So those of you who would have done that, I mean, you would have found it very, very easy, because but just by flipping 2 pages, you could have seen everything, right? Why did you take total weight as 610 kilograms, Arpit? I think the total weight was already given to you, right?
Sir, actually, I was confused between all up mass and I mean, I thought it will carry additional payload, so I added
all of mass. I mean, people asked, and I actually clarified also. Somebody else also asked here, and all of mass means total weight. You are not from Aero, Arpit?
Sir, I am from Aero, but like in aircrafts, we were also given all up weight, but like I thought it was additional payload that helicopter will carry.
No, how can it be? How can it be? I mean, Aero guy cannot make a mistake like this. But anyway, doesn't matter. I mean, I don't worry about, I mean, these kind of simple typographic calculation or calculation mistakes and those kind of things. But I mean, you have to be penalized because you are an Aero student. I mean, mechanical guy makes a mistake, he gets confused. I mean, I can understand. But all up weight is all up weight. All up means everything up, everything included. Yeah. Anyway, that's not a big deal. It's a minor thing.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, second there.
Sir, during the calculation for total power, in the parasitic power calculation, sir, the F is frontal area of the rotor or the whole body, including fuselage and everything?
F is always F. When did I say it is frontal area of the rotor? It is called flat plate area. That's it.
Sir, I am not getting the significance. Actually, what is the frontal area, sir? What are
it's not a frontal area. Who is calling it frontal area? When did I use frontal area for that?
Sir, then what it is, sir?
It is flat plate area. Flat plate area means it's actually, I even explained this, I mean, when I was teaching this particular part, that this flat plate area is basically we take drag of a flat plate. It is hard to quantify the drag coefficient of a normal aerial vehicle, like what is the CD for that. So in helicopter terminology, people actually started comparing the drag of the helicopter to that of a flat plate. So flat plate has a CD of 1 to the oblique flow. So now I tell you what is my drag in terms of the area of that flat plate. So you say that, okay, I mean, I have this size flat plate, and whatever drag this particular guy has is the same drag my helicopter is going to experience.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. But sir, the whole helicopter, this is for the whole helicopter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Sir, then actually, sir, my question is, when we do the calculations for multi-rotor helicopters, like the question you gave us, then should the proper way is to like add induced power plus profile power into n number of rotors plus right, other than total into n, right? Because frontal area separate.
So parasite power is for the whole body, right?
Yes, sir. So
parasite power defines the power required to overcome the drag of all the non-lifting and not thrusting areas.
Okay, sir.
So it is one body, right? I mean, quadcopter also has one body.
Yes, sir.
Tandem helicopter will have also one body.
So it should be, sir, Pi plus P naught into N plus P parasite, right?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes. So, I mean,
sir.
Yeah.
Sir, for different vehicle, for aerial vehicle, how can we find that frontal area? Sorry, that flat plated area.
It is obtained normally by doing CFD or by doing wind tunnel test of a scaled model. Further, there are empirical approaches also. If you look at book by Prouty, in his book, I mean, he has mentioned that how you can estimate flat plate drag contribution from different components of a helicopter. So you can do some empirical approximate calculation, but otherwise, if you want accurate answers, then you make a scaled model, stick it into a wind tunnel and test it out, or you make a CAD model or a nice refined model and do CFD on that, 3D CFD.
Okay, so from that we get
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, you end up getting your entire, just like you test a airfoil or a wing, you will test the whole fuselage. So you will get lift versus angle of attack, drag versus angle of attack, pitching moment, rolling moment, everything you will actually get. But here we are keeping things simple, so we are simply saying, okay, there is just a flat plate area, which is also constant, not function of angle of attack. Okay. Yeah. Any more comments?
Sir, will you upload the solution of this question?
So, upload what?
A solution of the question paper?
No, I'll not solve it. I mean, I'll not going to upload any solution. You solve it again. If you found it difficult or some part you couldn't solve, you can ask me. Okay, if you are facing any issue, you can ask me. I'll help you out.
Okay.
But there is no spoon feeding here. The solution will be uploaded. You will work the solution. No such things. Okay.
Sir, at least answer so that we can know we are right, sir. We have no reference so that we know we are right or wrong.
I mean, why would be wrong? I mean, this is all straightforward. There is no trick formula here. There is nothing, right?
Sir,
all formulas are given in your notes. If you only thing you can make a mistake is in actually calculation. Use MATLAB or something.
Sir, I have one more question, sir. It's sir, actually the mathematical model gets a little complicated, sir, because, sir, for example, it was given figure of merit there. Figure of merit value was given there, but in total power, when you calculate, there is no place to put the figure of merit.
Figure of merit is only for hovering, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, I got it, sir. But sir, still, sir, the losses that are present in hovering must be present during forward flight.
No, they are not. No, they are not.
Okay. So
the aerodynamics of helicopter rotor in all flight regimes is very, very different.
Okay, sir. So you mean to say that figure of merit turns to 1 when you are in forward flight, right?
What happens? See, in hover, most of the losses are there because the wake is very close to the rotor.
Okay.
Wake doesn't get dissipated very fast.
Okay.
But in forward flight, I mean, first of all, your wake becomes weak because rotor is not inducing a lot of velocity. You have already solved assignment 1, right?
Yes, sir.
What did you see there? How does your inflow changes with forward speed?
Sir, in what context, sir? I am not getting, sir, your question.
Your inflow with forward speed, right? I mean, okay, let me go to the share screen mode.
Sir, it rises because of the extra V infinity part.
What are you saying? What is the formula for your inflow in forward flight? Sorry. Right?
Yes, sir.
So I can even approximate with right. So we have said that, I mean, for mu greater than 0.15 or something, okay, this formula is fairly valid. Okay, so I can use this. Why? Because the moment I start flying at higher speeds, the rotor, okay, there is lot of inflow entering the rotor because of the forward speed. That is mu tan alpha. This is coming because of the forward speed.
Yes, sir.
So now the rotor actually has to induce very little amount. So this is the lambda I, that is the rotor is inducing. So this component becomes much, much smaller. So therefore, I mean, the rotor wake actually becomes less dominant. The wake related losses and all actually are less significant. And you would be surprised to know that uniform inflow, okay, uniform inflow itself gives you very, very good inflow calculations at higher speeds. Especially say if I go very fast, I mean, so if I go to mu 0.35 or 0.368 or something, okay. So for 0.36, 0.37, these kind of numbers, okay, your inflow that the uniform inflow method is giving and inflow from a very sophisticated, very, I mean, physics-based free wake model. Okay. So there is something called free wake model, and if you compare free wake model and uniform inflow, and I have done that, right? So if you look at some of my papers, which probably you can download from my homepage, there are actually graphs where I have actually done exactly that. I have compared the inflow from momentum theory and inflow from freeway, and they match very well. So the point I'm trying to strike is that, I mean, in forward flight, a lot of things are different. The inflow becomes less important. Your losses are less dominant. You don't require this kappa of 1.15, right?
Yes, sir. And the figure of merit is, we can assume one, right? I know it's defined.
No, figure of merit is not even defined. Figure of merit is only defined for hovering flight. It has no meaning in forward flight.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, so you cannot say that figure of merit is one in forward flight. Don't even dare say something like that, because it has no meaning. It's only defined for hovering rotor. Okay. Any other query, comment? Nothing. No, fine. So I just uploaded the homework assignment 2. It is due in 2 weeks from now. And 2 weeks means 2 weeks. No extension, nothing. Okay. It will involve mostly writing computer program on BEMT. Okay. So now you are going to write a small code, and this code will be very, very useful, and you will be building up on that. Okay. So the same code will be used for next assignment also. You will add more things in that, and we'll do all the things step by step. So now you have to do the BEMT, write a code to get the CT plot, CP plot, CP distribution plots, and all those calculations by doing everything numerically without requiring to use any formula. You will not be using any formula for anything. All the calculations will be done by numerical integration. So how do we do numerical integration? So you will have two options. One is you can do this regular method or trapezoidal method or something, or the other method will be
Gaussian quadrature.
Gaussian quadrature, exactly. Yes. So we'll do Gaussian quadrature, and I'm going to tell you what is Gaussian quadrature now, because some of you may not be familiar with that. So the main topic now we are going to study is actually applying blade element theory in forward flight, and then deriving the blade flap dynamics equation, and then solving the whole trim problem. So we'll do all that one by one, but before that we need to do this for the next homework assignment, which is, so take down all this carefully. In Gaussian quadrature, okay. What do we do in this? So Gaussian quadrature actually allows you to express any definite integral of this form to a summation series, okay. So a definite continuous integral of this kind is actually expressed as a series summation. So what is this? So this is summation of I equals to 1 to m of wi into the same function f at x of i's. So this is now, if m equals to 3, this will be w1 fx1, w2 fx2, w3 fx3, etc. But we'll do it for m equal to 6. So this guy becomes basically w1 f of x1 plus w2 f of x2, and like that. Okay, so up to 6. So we'll do it for m equal to 6. So what happens at m equal to 6? Now what are these w1, w2, etc.? So these are actually weights. This wi is actually weight. It's like a weightage factor. And xi is, so what is happening now? I mean, it's in summation series, we are multiplying some weightage factor with the value of the function at xi or different Gaussian points. So this is called Gaussian point. What are these Gaussian points? And actually there are nice proper mathematical approaches. And if you do any course on numerical analysis or computational methods, there you may actually get a chance to learn about Legendre polynomials and many other things. And in that, Gaussian quadratures also come as one particular thing. So one can easily derive these things and be able to find out these weights. But you don't have to do it now. It's already done for you. So we'll use 6-point Gaussian quadrature. So this will be 6 point. So we'll have 6 Xi's and 6 W's. So what are these and how they look like? So x1, 6. So the 1 and 6 are both going to have same magnitude but different signs. So it will be minus and plus. So minus sign is for 1 and plus sign is for 6. Hence minus plus and not plus minus. Okay. Minus plus 0.932 469 514. And you have to note it down up to all these decimal places to ensure accuracy. So 0.932 469514. Okay. So these are 2 points. So your x1 will be minus of this, x6 will be plus of this. Okay. Next comes x2, 5. Same way, minus plus. Here it is 0.661209386. So note it down very carefully. Otherwise, you can always search on internet and find this also. But to save you time, I'm giving you this here. 0.661209386. And x of 3, 4 equals to minus plus 0.02 386 19186. So 02386 19186. Okay. So that's your 3, 4. 3 will be minus, 4 will be plus of the same value. So these are the points. These are the points where you will do the function evaluation. So whatever function we are trying to integrate, we'll calculate them at these values. Then comes the weights. So weight 1, 6 are also same, and now they are actually same. That is no minus plus business. 0.17 13244 13244 92. So these are 2 weights for 0.1 and 0.6. Weights for 0.2 and 5. 0.607 6076 1573. 0.360 761 573. And finally weights 3, 4. 0.467 9139 and 35. All right. So these are the 6 parameters, 6 points or locations where we do function evaluation, and 6 weights, right? So are you done taking this down? I'm going to clean up, okay? Shall I clean?
Yes, sir. Sir, the summation of the weights is approximately 2. Sir, is it okay, sir?
Summation of the weights is equal to, I don't care whatever they are. These are what the weights are. Okay. So I'm erasing this. Fine. No resistance. So gone. All right. But now the problem is that, the integral that Gaussian quadrature is helping me solve is this. Right. but I actually want to solve a different integral, right? Which is there for my BEMT. So my BEMT, all my equations go like this: 0 to 1 of dCt, or equals to 0 to 1. It could be half sigma CL alpha into theta minus phi into r square dr or something, right? So I'm just writing from my memory or something like this. So this becomes my thrust equation. So I want to solve this integral, or I want to do the integral for my power of Cp or Cq, whatever. So there is a difference, right? I mean, this is a different limit, this is a different limit. So how do we apply Gaussian quadrature formula for this guy? What do we do?
So this is dCt. If you look at the expression for dCt integration, it is like a even function. So we can divide it by 2 and put the -1 to 1.
I cannot, I mean, rely on that, I mean, completely. It may not be even function because CL alpha is also not constant, and this complicated function.
R square dr. There is a r square dr.
R square dr is fine. I mean, okay, but what happens to the dCq function? There is a r cubed, and also there will be a lambda into dCt term also. So let's not rely on that. Okay. Then it will be half or double or something. It will not necessarily be like that. I don't think, I mean, you can say that, I mean, 0 to 1 is actually, I mean, 0 to half will be same as half to 1.
No, sir, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Sir, in integration, we have a rule that if -1 to 1 integration f of x dx, if f of x is a even function, then we can take 2 into 0 to 1 f of x dx.
That is true, but I mean, there is no guarantee this function is an even function.
Yes,
so what will normally be done? I mean, forget about even and odd functions. Yeah. What would be a more general approach? If I want to change my limits of integration, what do you do?
Sir, we can take a different variable.
Yes, change of variable. So that is called change of variable, right?
Yes, sir.
That's all we have to do. So we do a change of variable to convert this equation to this form. Okay, so that I can directly go around solving my relevant equations. So what do we do? So we try to derive this for a generic scenario where my integration is from a to b, f of t dt. So this is the integral I want to be solved. So what do? You say t equals to ax plus b. Okay, so this is my new function t, which is a function of x, and I need to find what are these a and b, which will allow me to change the variable from -1 to 1 to this sum any a or b, which could be 0, 1, or it could be anything. It could be even, see, I mean, once you see the homework assignment, you will see that, I mean, we are not going to do the integral from 0 to 1 in one shot by using 6 points. We will break the whole blade into multiple segments. So for each segment, what happens? It goes from 0 to d, or rather delta 1, then it will go from delta 1 to delta 2. So it is basically different segments. So you start from the root, you take one segment, then you do another segment, then you do a third segment, and like that. So I'll break the whole integral into many different segments for the blade. So that's why, I mean, I will derive it in this kind of form. So what happens? A will be equal to minus of a plus b, right? So if when x is -1, t is a, and when x is +1, t is b. So it becomes a plus b. So these two allow me to find b equals to capital B equal to small a plus b by 2, and capital A equal to b minus a by 2. So that these two now allow me to do a changeover. So now my new function becomes this, and so from this what I get, my t is now equals to b minus a by 2 times x plus a plus b by 2, okay, and dt equals to b minus a by 2 into dx. So that now allows me to do a complete change of variable. So now my integral Gaussian quadrature integral can be rewritten in this form. So as per Gaussian quadrature, integral from a to b ft dt is equals to sigma I equals to 1 to m, where m is equal to 6 for us. Wi, so the weights will not change, but we'll have f of ti. Okay, so instead of f of x, now we are doing f of ti. So what is ti? Ti is actually this guy, right? So keep mind this. So whatever x size we were having earlier, what we wrote in the previous board, which we erased, so those same points now will have to be put into this to find out this T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, T6, right? And that's where you will do the function evaluations. And this into now, because there is dx also, which is converted to dt, I will also have a b minus a by 2 multiplied to this whole thing. So you can see clearly. Okay. And where ti, so in this case, my ti is defined now as b minus a by 2 into xi plus a plus b over 2. So that becomes my ti, and this is what my integration. Okay, so now I can use Gaussian quadrature. So I can use this modified formula now to do Gaussian quadrature for any definite integral going from a to b for any function ft dt. Okay. So all of you have noted down this. Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
And it's clear, I hope. Any confusion about this? No, fine. So I'm going to erase this. So now using all of this, what are you supposed to do? So let me erase, then I write up. So finally, now with this, I actually need to solve these equations, these two integrals, and that is your work in homework assignment. Half 0 to 1 sigma, and now you are doing things numerically, so you can keep everything inside the integral. So it becomes a very generic thing, because your solidity will be changing. You will have variable quad and all in the homework assignment. So keep sigma inside. So theta r square minus lambda into r into dr, and lambda is your BEMT formula. So lambda will be that square root of something. There is a big formula, right? So that will be the BEMT, blade element momentum theory formula used for lambda. So this is the integral you have to solve using now either Gaussian quadrature, or you can use any other method like trapezoidal or rectangular or something. But in rectangular and all trapezoidal, you may have to use large number of points, around 200. So rectangular, Leishman used to made me use in my homework assignment 200 points. But in Gaussian quadrature, it is more accurate. So just the whole blade you break into 10 segments. So 10 segments means your integral goes from 0 to 0.1 plus 0.1 to 0.2, etc., going up to 0.9 to 1. So you will have 10. So you will have a loop which will run on the number of blade segments, and each segment will have Gaussian quadrature 6 points. And so you keep doing each integral and add them over to get the whole integral done. The other expression is this: half 0 to 1 lambda CL alpha sigma into theta r square minus lambda r into dr, plus you have half 0 to 1 sigma CD naught r cube dr. All right. So these are the two main integrals that we have to solve. So I prefer all of you use Gaussian quadrature, but if you find it difficult, you can use any other method. But you should get accurate answers. And what to say? So Gaussian quadrature is fairly easy to implement. I don't think you'll have much difficulty. And yes, so before you directly jump to solve the whole problem, if you want to learn how to use Gaussian quadrature, solve a simple integral. Okay, so write a small MATLAB code where you try to do integral from 0 to 1 x squared dx, because you know the answer to this is actually going to be 1 by 3, right? So you know the exact answer. So now you do 6-point Gaussian quadrature on this. Then you can even break it down and you can do the integral from 0 to 0.1 plus 0.1 to 0.2, going all the way up to 0.9 to 1. Okay, and do the same integral. So you can write a simple MATLAB code before you write the full BEMT code, where you practice how to implement Gaussian quadrature. And you will see it is very easy to write for this kind of problem. Once you have written this, I mean, then it becomes, you can make it a function or whatever, and you can keep doing integrals as much as you want. So in this case, once you complete the integral, so first case you can do just 0 to 1, only using 6 points. Next case, you split the whole thing into multiple segments and use 6 points within each, so it may become 60 points, but it's a code, so it will be very easy. And check the answers, right? So once you are confident, yes, I know how to implement Gaussian quadrature, then you write the remaining code. And the remaining code is what? I mean, just you have all formulas given to you, so it will not take you much time. Once you have the Gaussian quadrature working, rest of the things are just matter of typing. So it's a fairly easy. The assignment may look intimidating. I've given it 2 weeks, but you should be able to finish it in 1 week time. So therefore, I mean, do not expect even a single day, even 1 hour extension in this assignment at all. It's a very easy assignment. You should be able to do it in 1 week, and aim for that. Don't keep it for 2 weeks, because I will give another homework assignment and next one will be more intensive than this one. Okay, so better you finish it off quickly, and it is very easy. I mean, once you set up the Gaussian quadrature, the remaining things are no time. Yes, the implementation of what you call Prandtl lifting, this Prandtl Tiplos function is slightly tricky. It is iterative, so that may take you some time. So question 2 may require some more effort, but part 1 of the question 1 should be done in matter of a day. Should be able to do it very, very quickly. Okay. So I'm clearing this now. No objections? Oh. All right. So that was the deal about Gaussian quadrature business, which you can use to solve the next homework assignment. Now I will go back to sharing my notes of how do we apply blade element method in forward flight. So you need to draw this equation, this diagram. Okay. Maybe I can draw on the sides as well to give you an idea how to go about it. So this is the topic is blade element method in forward flight. That is, how do we do blade element in forward flight condition? And this blade element theory in forward flight is sort of the building block of all kinds of helicopter analysis. So unless until you are doing CFD, other than CFD, everything else actually in helicopter world, you are doing flight mechanics for helicopters, you are doing stability analysis for helicopters, you are looking at the helicopter trim problem, you are developing a controller. Anything and everything would probably require you to do some kind of blade element method. So this is very, very important. This is like I mentioned, this is sort of the building block of more accurate and more physically consistent simulation for helicopters. So how do we start? So right. So step 1 is you draw this diagram of a rotor in forward flight. So this is your the whole rotor azimuthal plane as we see from the top, and This is a blade, as you see here. It is at an angle psi. And now we are going to define a lot of coordinate frames. So we are going to now look at the whole kinematics very carefully. And this rotor is spinning at angular speed omega. So the convention is that you at the bottom is actually this is towards the tail of the helicopter, okay, and this is towards the nose of the helicopter. This part is top is nose, bottom is tail. So this is called 0 degree azimuth. This is called 90 degrees azimuth, 180 degrees azimuth, 270 degrees azimuth, and finally 360 degrees, which is again 0. Okay, so that is the whole deal. Now in this we actually have different coordinate frames defined, and you have to understand this very carefully. And how many of you are doing the dynamics course right now? You
Yes,
can
sir.
raise your hands. Use the raise of hands function to. How many are doing the dynamics class? Or have you done the dynamics class? Okay, either way. So 4, 5, not many people are. So others who are not doing dynamics, have you ever done dynamics? Especially transforming from one coordinate to another coordinate. But I mean, in your undergrad, I mean, all of you would have done some dynamics, right? Yes or no? So Sajendra, you are in mechanical, in aerospace. Which department you are in?
Mechanical, sir.
Mechanical people are taught dynamics, I mean, left, right, and center. You have machine design and whatnot. You have rotor dynamics also as courses typically. You did not do any course on rigid body dynamics.
No, sir.
Okay. You should ask for your money back from the college where you studied. That they have made you a mechanical engineer without having trained you in rigid body dynamics. That is very scary situation. Okay. So fine, you can bring your hands down. So you guys can bring your hands down. Anyway, so I'm not going to teach you the whole dynamics, but you can take a look at what we have. Okay. Sajendra, you are a student of aero department or mechanical department?
Mechanical, sir.
Achha, you are, right now you must be doing mechanical dynamics course, right?
Sir, right now, sir,
Huh?
sir, right now I don't have any dynamics course, sir. We have only introductory courses right now of aero.
Yeah, so you are in which group?
Sir, sir, I am 21 batch, sir.
Yeah, so you are in fluid thermal, you are in
Aerodynamics.
Oh, you are in aero department, right?
Yes, sir.
I asked you are in from mechanical or you are from aerospace. In a sense, currently which department you are enrolled in? I was asking.
Sorry, sir. Sir, my BTech is from mechanical, sir.
But right now you are in aerodynamics.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So I am surprised why you took helicopter course.
It's complicated and challenging, sir. That's
complicated and challenging. You like complicated and challenging things.
Then fixed wing, sir. In comparison to fixed wing, sir.
Yes, that is true. That is absolutely true. Okay, that's okay. Fine. But I mean, you okay? So that's okay. I thought, I mean, you would have compulsory courses and you would not have room to do this. But anyway, somehow you managed. All right. So the point I was trying to make is that we now look at carefully a lot of coordinate frames, and we would actually be transforming things from one frame to another frame. Why? Because what happens if you look at the helicopter rotor? Now, I mean, even though I have said blade element method in forward flight, but what I am going to derive now is actually a blade element method in any general flight. So I'll erase this diagram. So it's not just in forward flight. I am actually setting up the stage for any general. Oops, what am I doing? General or maneuvering flight. Okay. So what I am setting the stage for will allow you to analyze the helicopter in any kind of flight condition. But you will have to move systematically by setting up the problem in a nice manner. Because right now what we do when we look at the angle of attack alpha, I simply say, oh, my angle of attack is theta minus phi and theta is UP by UT. And this is lambda into R or lambda by R, whatever. Yeah, lambda by R, I think. Yeah, lambda is again UP, or I can just keep it as lambda, whatever. So it's something like this, right? Yeah. So this I know very clearly. I know what is UP, what is UT, and so on. But when my helicopter is actually in a very general fund scenario where my helicopter could be rolling, it could be also pitching, so it could be doing a banked rolling pull-up, it could be doing a rolling pull-up, or it could be a rolling dive. So in such scenarios, what happens? The resultant velocity which the blade element experiences, okay, so what velocity it will experience would be a function of many things like P, Q, R, that is the motions of the helicopter. That is, P will be your roll rate, pitch rate, yaw rate. So these rates, then my helicopter may also be moving in 3D, that is, we'll have 3 components of velocity about XYZ axis, so UVW. So all these are going to combine together and make the resultant airspeed here not very easy to write just like that. So you have to do proper vector algebra and follow the standard approaches or methods that we use for kinematics, that is geometry of motion. So let us see what all we need for this kind of analysis. So we start by defining several coordinate frames and let us look at them carefully. So first, when we look at the top view of the rotor, we have this blade and we attach one frame here, which will be going out of the plane of the board. That frame would be K hat, and we call this non-rotating. Then we have I hat, and there will be, luckily I think these diagrams are too close to each other, so it is slightly confusing to see what is from where. I think in the top one, just let me grab the picture. Okay. All right, so fine. So what we do is we define multiple frames of references. We start by defining this frame of reference called IJK non-rotating. So this is called non-rotating frame attached to the rotor hub. Give me one moment, I'm just putting the call. Yeah, sorry about that. So right, so we'll define these different frames of reference. First frame of reference we'll call IJK. So this IJK is basically my rotor disc is this, and from center I have one axis here, one axis here, which I'm calling x-axis, y-axis, and vertical z-axis. Okay, and the corresponding unit vectors are going to be this. So I hat non-rotating. This guy is J hat non-rotating, and the one which is going up out of the plane of the board is K hat non-rotating. So I have shown K, there will be I, and there will be J. Do not forget to put hats because it's very, very important. Anything which doesn't have a hat is not a vector. So be very, very respectful to vectors, because if you are not, you will end up making big mess of all your calculations. So it's very, very important to see in which basis, in which frame we are defining my vectors. So this is the first frame of reference. So this is attached to the center of the rotor disc, but it is not spinning with the blade. So this is a non-rotating frame of reference. Next, what we'll do is that we'll actually attach another frame of reference, which we are calling I hat, J hat, K hat. This we call undeformed. So keep noting down all this. It's called undeformed rotating frame attached to hub which is rotating with the hub. So this is a new set of frame which we are connecting from here. Let me change the color. So this guy I'm just calling I. Okay, ignore whatever is there below this. Okay. So it's called I. Another vector will be going in this direction, which I'll call J. And the third will also be located here, coming out of the plane of the board, and this I will call as the K hat. So I hat, J hat, K hat. And what is this I hat, J hat, K hat? It's called undeformed, a rotating frame attached to the hub. So the previous frame of reference, this XYZ, which we call IJK, non-rotating, is attached, or rather not attached, it's actually located at the center of the hub, but it is not attached to the hub. That is, it doesn't have motion of the hub. The second frame IJK is actually having this, it's directly attached to my hub. It is aligned with my first blade or one of the blades, and it's the axis is along the direction of the blade. So that is your spanwise direction. The second axis is normal to that, and third axis is also vertical. So this becomes IJK. Why undeformed? Because what happens, my blade under the motion of aerodynamic load in forward flight, you have seen the videos of that, the blade actually moves up and down, right? It's moving like this. Now in that kind of scenario, this blade is going to flap about this hinge point. But now my frame, which I am defining this I hat, is actually in this direction. So it is not attached to the blade and it will not move with the blade. So this frame is always remaining undeformed, not deforming with the blade. Hence the name undeformed. By the way, I have one question. Why in this kind of dynamics problems do we need so many different frames of reference? Who can explain this to me? Why do you need so many different frames of reference? Those of you who have done dynamics course, or even you have not done dynamics course, either way.
Sir, it's easier to calculate sometimes.
Calculate what?
Forces, anything.
No. I can't say, you can't make loose statement like that. I mean, easier to calculate anything. That is a very loose statement to make, right? It's okay, you're trying, that's fine. Okay, but I mean, yes, it helps, but you are not right there actually to the point. Parth, you want to say anything?
Sir, observers are in a different frame of reference. Sometimes they are observing a different frame of reference. That's why.
Yes, that is fine. That is fine. I mean, sometimes you may want to know because the observer frame is different. But here, I mean, I don't care. Why? Because finally my helicopter is flying. I need to model the helicopter.
And sir, we want to know the position and other velocities and other kind of parameters in different coordinates. That's why in different frame of reference.
I don't get fully what you are saying. Other parameters in different frames. What about them?
Sir, to determine the position and velocities in different frame of reference.
Position and velocity. You are saying you define.
I mean, here we have roll, pitch, and yaw motions in different frame of reference. That's why.
No, roll, pitch, and yaw are always in the same frame of reference. That is the body frame of reference. We'll come to that frame also. Yeah. So
but the velocities, I mean, VW, that we are in different frame of reference. We are
right. So exactly. So I mean, you are getting there almost. Yeah. So what Parth is saying is that my helicopter, when it's flying, it's actually the velocities are defined with respect to inertial frame, right? Because I say, okay, I'm going at 5 meters per second. That is with respect to some inertial frame. Although in reality, there is nothing called inertial frame, but for our to make our lives easier, we say any frame of reference attached to the fixed ground or any fixed point on Earth is actually a fixed frame of reference. Yeah. Okay, sorry again. So what I was saying is that so your translational velocities are normally defined in inertial frame. Your rotational speeds like PQR is defined in the body frame. So the key philosophy behind defining multiple frames of reference is to make your life easier when there are multiple rotations happening. What happens, I mean, when it is very easy for us to visualize and understand rigid body rotation about one axis, right? If I right, so yeah, this is a better rigid body. So this is a rigid body, right? This remote, and I can very easily visualize this rotation about one axis. If it is hinged about one axis, I can say, oh, okay, this is the amount of rotation happening, and it's about this particular axis. But when it is actually doing some motion like this, right? It's a three-dimensional rotation happening. Can you tell me how much of rotation is happening about which axis? You cannot. And then I tell you that, I mean, in this kind of motion, while this kind of motion is happening, there is something which is moving on the body. There is something which is happening inside the body, right? So it will be very, very difficult and impossible to define the overall motion. So what happens when we define these different frames, it allows us to separate out different rotations. And once you separate out different rotations, then I mean, I do it to a point that I mean, between one frame and the another frame, there is only one rotation happening at a time. So I can easily relate, oh, okay, there is rotation about this axis, about that axis. So that's the objective of defining so many frames. We always want to isolate rotations so that jumping from one observer frame to another observer frame, I only have to deal with one kind of angle and one rotation, which I can easily handle. So it's for our more sanity than anything else. And it also makes the whole process of deriving equations for velocity, for writing out position vectors of a point on the blade and the blade. So what is happening? I want actually to define the position vector of point P on the blade. And this blade is actually flapping up and down. It is rotating around the azimuth. And this whole rotor is actually sitting on the helicopter, and the helicopter itself is rolling, pitching, and yawing, and also translating at different speeds about different axes. So you can now imagine, I'll ask you to find the velocity that the point P will be experiencing because of all these motions. What are the motions? Blade rotation, blade flapping motion. There could be also lead lag. There could also be twisting motion. Right now, I'm not even talking about that. Then there is helicopters UVW and helicopters PQR. So many translations and rotations happening, and finding out P will become very, very challenging. And that's why we define so many different frames. All right, so now we have so far looked at two frames. Okay. First frame is the non-rotating frame attached to the hub, aligned like this, X pointing towards the tail of the helicopter, Y pointing to the left. Sorry, right. So this is starboard side. You are familiar with this term, starboard port?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All of you? So this actually comes from the naval engineering or the ship engineering terminology, because they used to call the left side as the port. The ship will be always having port on the left and starboard on the right. So in airplane terminology also we use this sometimes. So that is what. So Y is on the starboard side, X is towards the tail, and Z is vertically upwards. The second frame is undeformed rotating frame attached to the hub and rotating with the hub. So now you can see that the IJK will have an angular velocity of omega, as you see. And this omega is actually omega of K hat, right? Or omega of K hat non-rotating. You can, both of them are same. So that was the one frame. Now we look at the blade. Okay. So what I'll just overwrite on this so that things become more obvious to you. So this is my blade, and this blade is actually flapping up. Hence, it is drawn like this. So far you have seen two frames. So we see I, which is non-rotating frame, which we saw here also. And we also saw small I, normal I, which is a rotating undeformed frame. So this is aligned with the blade, but not in the plane of the blade. It is in the same plane as the rotor disc. Right? So if I make a rotor disc, it is in the same plane as a rotor disc. But it is at an angle psi, which you see here also. Angle psi, which is the azimuth angle with respect to the I non-rotating. So psi is the angle between these two. Now, once you reach here, about the axis which will be normal to this guy I, okay, so about this axis, I actually flap the blade up. So my I is along this direction and my blade initially is here, but it flaps up. So now it has actually gone to an angle beta, which is my flapping angle. So now at this point, I define another frame of reference which is coming out of the blade, and that is this particular frame. I will make the color say purple, and that is, so this is the new frame I hat prime, and normal to that will be this guy J hat prime. So this line you see is normal to the blade, and this guy is actually, sorry, this is not the correct thing. Yeah, it should be J hat prime. Where is my J hat prime? Okay. Yeah, it's a bit confusing. So J hat prime is this, sorry. Yeah. So actually, I mean, it's hard to represent 2D things and 3D things in the same frame, but I hope you will be able to understand. So what happens, I is there, then there will be a J, and there will be a J prime also. Both of them are in the plane, but I can ignore them. They are in the plane, but now what I want actually is the J prime, right? So J prime will be normal. So my blade is like this. So J prime will be normal to the blade. Okay, it will be in this direction. Okay, this direction. Blade is flapped up. So this is denoted by this guy, J prime is here. And it is also interesting to note that because the rotation is happening about J, so this I has actually a J, and that J is also in the same direction, right? So what is happening? This is I prime. Sorry, this is I normal I. That is this guy I. So my J is actually in this direction, J, and my J prime is also going to be in this direction. Why? Because the blade is flapping about. So blade is actually flapping up about this same axis. So it is actually rotating about this axis by angle beta to come to this point. And therefore, J and J prime are both along the same direction. But K prime will be different. So you can see the K prime is here. So this is my K prime. Okay. So now I have I prime, I have J prime, and I have K prime. And rest of the frames are same as before. They are in the plane, except the K and KNR, which are actually vertically here. So K and KNR, I can denote with use color red. So this is K, non-rotating, and your normal K hat. So now we have third frame also considered. So this is called now it's called I hat, J hat, K hat. It's called deformed frame attached to the blade and rotating with the blade. So we have non-rotating frame, then rotating but not deformed frame, and now I have deformed and rotating frame. So you see, in every step I am actually accounting from one angle. So from here to here I account for psi, one rotation. From here to here I account for another angle beta. So by here, I mean, I have accounted for two rotations easily. So that's my third frame. And fourth frame actually now comes at the helicopter. So the helicopter, you can make the helicopter body, and this will have different frames of reference. So one is pointing downwards. I can go to another color. So one is pointing downwards, which is my KB, that the vertical body frame. So this is IB, JB, KB is the frame of reference attached to the frames attached to the body of the helicopter, and the body rates of the helicopter are measured in this particular axis. So my P, Q, and R, the roll rate, pitch rate, and yaw rate are all measured in the body reference frame or the body fixed axis. So this is attached to the center of gravity G of the helicopter, and down is the vertical K to the, this is going to be right side. So the starboard side, we have this JB, which you see here, JB, and towards the nose of the helicopter, I have IB. So I had B, J had B, and I have K had B. So these are the three body frames. I, J, K. So about I, you have the roll angle or roll rate, which is P. This is the roll rate. U is the forward velocity. About J axis, I have the side velocity V, and I have the pitch rate, which is Q. About the vertical axis, I have the heave velocity W, which is the vertical component of velocity, and I have the yaw rate, which is R. And finally, I also have an inertial frame of reference called capital I, capital J, and capital K. This is my inertial, because this U and V and W are normally defined in this particular so U, V, W are defined about the inertial frame. That is the overall velocity of the helicopter as respect to the ground. So I hope you have made all the three drawings and you have made all the notes regarding this axis system. Is it done? Also, it is important to note that this IJK in a non-rotating, the non-rotating frame of reference is parallel to my body reference frame. Okay. So you can say that the rotor disc frame and the body frames are same, only the signs may be different. Okay, the way I have defined.
Sir.
Yes.
Here, inertial frames are independent of other four frame of reference, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so it is out of the body.
Yes. So this has no connection with any other frame. This is just some arbitrary frame which is giving me a reference point.
Okay, so it is for observer.
I mean, it is there for something. It's mostly there to define the translational speed. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, you will see most of the calculation will be doing in the deformed frame actually. So finally, we will take everything to the deformed frame, because that's where the airspeed will be seen and the lift force will be generated. Because the lift force on the blade is actually when the blade is deformed like this. So to get the lift force, I actually have to get the velocity in the deformed frame. So everything will be taken to the deformed frame, which is I hat, J hat, K hat. So I want everything probably in this. We'll see as we go forward. Any other question?
Sir, we will get the absolute velocity in the inertial coordinates, right?
We don't care about the absolute velocity.
So not even for tip velocity or tip blade velocity reaching
So see,
close to Mach.
everything will come there. Okay. But finally, it will be transformed. So we'll get the absolute velocity, but we'll express that same absolute velocity in a frame of reference where, I mean, it actually makes any sense. If I tell you the velocity of my point of this point, okay, in inertial frame is something x, y, z. What will you use with? So I give you the velocity about these three axes. And you have to find the aerodynamic force here. How will you use this? Tell me. Can you establish a connection? No, right?
No, sir.
Right. So that's why, I mean, we actually want things. So depending on what we are doing. Sometimes, I mean, if I'm trying to solve the flight dynamics equation, especially translational equation, so you are solving Newton's equation, sigma f equal to ma. Right. So when we do flight dynamics, we solve Newton and Euler equations. So Newton's equation for translation and Euler's equation for rotations. So that actually is done here, right? So for that, I mean, this inertial equations may be, or sorry, inertial coordinates may be useful. All right, so let's move. So our objective is to find the velocity of a point P, which we have marked here on the blade, some arbitrary point which is located at a distance Rp from the hub. So to make our lives easy, we have assumed the blade is actually hinged directly at the axis of rotation, where omega is the angular velocity. So we want to find the velocity of this guy P in I hat, J hat, K hat prime frame, as this is the net speed which would determine the aerodynamic loads which would govern the flapping motion of the blade and also determine the final thrust and motion. So my key objective is to find out the velocity of air as experienced by a particular point P on the blade, which is on some blade element, because we are doing blade element theory in a general maneuvering flight condition. So we try to find everything in this frame because my aerodynamic forces are defined about this frame. Aerodynamic about this deformed frame of reference, Ijk prime. This one, deformed frame attached to the blade and rotating with it. Okay, so let's move ahead and see how do we go about doing this. So we start by writing out the position vector of the point P in the body frame. So there are some other points which are marked, so O and G. Let me see. So G is the center of gravity. You can mark that. And another point O, which I forgot to mention, is the, so this point O should be marked. O is the center of the hub and G is the center of gravity. So if I want to find the velocity of point P in the body frame, then I need to find the velocity of O related to the point G and velocity of point P related to the point O. So the relative velocities can be added and it will give you the net speed. And that's what we'll see. Velocity of point P is the velocity point P on blade is given by position vector of point O, which is the hub center, related to the center of gravity, plus relative location of point P with respect to the point O. So I am defining it into two parts. That is, okay, so we are saying, oh, this point I want to find out. So I have one vector going from, sorry, here to here, another vector going from here to here. So the resultant then will be something like this. So the resultant position vector goes from here to here. So this vector I am trying to find by going from here to O and from O to P. That is my objective. So that gives me this RP equals to ROG and RPO. But I think, I mean, we are already out of time, so I'll stop here because there's no point of proceeding further because we have to start from here again. So I'll stop. Any questions so far? Anybody else wants to share your experiences of your midterm exam?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I have equated lambda from momentum theory and blade element theory, and I have solved it by using Newton-Raphson method to find the tip speed. So I've got some answers. So I was not sure that it is.
How can you get tip speed by finding lambda?
No, sir, I have not found lambda. I have equated the lambda of momentum theory and BET theory, blade element theory, and I got in terms of omega r and VH. So VH I was knowing, so I found that VH and I got omega r using Newton-Raphson method.
No, but where do you know the VH from? There is no VH given to you.
Sir, I've calculated VH.
How? From where?
So using I no VH also, sir, in form of. I have to check. I have done my assignment, so I will mail it to you. I will ask.
No, I mean, I'll grade your exam, so I'll see what you have done.
Yes, sir.
So once I give you grade exam, I mean, then we can discuss and see what you have done.
Yes, sir.
See, I thought I have given enough hints for everybody to figure out, and that's why I had told very clearly, make cheat sheets.
Yes.
So if you did not do that, then it's a very, very important lesson for you. Listen to your professor.
Yes.
If you don't listen, you get in trouble. It's something which your parents would have been telling you from your childhood. Okay, always listen to your parents. Otherwise, you get into trouble. Right? So it's like that. So being smart is one thing, but being street smart, that being able to follow instructions is also equally important. Right? So I told you everything because there was a purpose to that. Right? So I don't say random things.
Yes, sir.
And it's not just for this particular course. I mean, my entire life I've given so many open book exams, open notes exams, and I always do this. I make a cheat sheet and go. And my teachers also told me. I mean, my professors also warned me, bring a cheat sheet. And I mean, it is very natural. Okay, that I mean, if there is any professor gives you an open notes exam, the first thing should come to you that I have to make a cheat sheet. You can never go in an open book and open notes exam by thinking you will be able to find things from your notes and from your books. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
So anyway, fine. So
sir, I've got it. So VH, sir, I have found using the formula root under T divided by 2 into rho into A. So the trust I was knowing.
Say that again. What did you say?
Sir, VH. I have calculated VH using the formula root under T divided by rho into A. So first I have, yes, sir.
This formula, right? What I've written on the screen.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, I don't think in the yeah, this time you can find but wait, what was given? I don't remember the question paper. You have to find CT, right?
Yes, sir.
First of all.
So use it, yes, sir. First, I was trying to find the tip speed, omega r. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, but VH will not help you with anything.
Sir, lambda is equal to VH by omega r using momentum theory.
Pretty crazy way of solving. Okay. I'll see what you have done, but it's pretty crazy because once
I've got some answers, sir. So I was not sure that whether I was correct or wrong.
Yeah, because I mean, the moment you say I am going to use BEMT formula, you are saying, right?
Yes, sir. So my tip speed came
no
7.
Then this is no longer valid. You have used two formulas for induced velocity then.
Yes.
for same problem, right?
Sir, my tip speed came 7.29 meter per second.
7.29 meter per second.
Yes, sir.
Is this not alarming?
Yes, sir. It was little alarming.
You can
And I thought,
probably run faster than this.
yes,
What was your CT? Your CT would have come, I mean, crazy high.
1.48, but it was too high.
My God. How could you believe that to be true?
So I was thinking it may be wrong, but since that
It
was,
may be
I was
wrong.
totally,
It has to be wrong. It cannot maybe. I have, how many times I have told that? I mean, my CT has to be in the range of 0.004 to 0.01 kind of thing.
yes, sir.
Right. So anyway, fine. You tried what you could. Okay. So I'll see. I mean, approach and process is important, but lesson for you. Okay. Do not ignore good advice given to you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll stop now because I have to start my meeting for structures group students. So fine. So I'll look at what you have done, okay, because I mean.
Sir, can we have some another meeting for this midterm paper exam? I mean, for discussion meeting.
Sure, we can have. I mean, so you guys solve it yourself. I mean, okay,
Or we can.
Discussion. There is any point of whole class discussion. Okay. If you
Or we
have
can
specific
have-
questions, solve it yourself. You should be able to solve it. I mean, because
Yes.
now you know. I mean, the trick, so it is very easy to solve. It's very
Yes, sir.
straightforward. The trick was only to use the hint. I had given you theta 7.5 for a reason.
Yes, sir. There was theta TW also. That's why
Yes.
we have.
Theta 7.5 was given. Theta TW is not used.
Yes,
You will
yes,
not
yes.
need
There-
theta. Yes.
I have used.
Theta 7.5
That's
I
right.
have very reason I mentioned it in that particular manner. So that you directly use a simple formula, you don't even require theta TW.
EMD, direct EMD.
Not BMT, BET. BET with uniform inflow. BEMT is
Yeah,
never
yeah.
used in hand
CT.
calculations. BEMT
Yeah.
is never used in hand calculations. Simple funda. You can only solve BEMT by writing a code, which you are doing in next homework assignment. So you cannot do any closed form derivations using BEMT. Just remember that. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, what if in the first question, instead of hover, you gave forward flight? Sir, we wouldn't have been able, sir, then it wouldn't be able to be solved, right, sir? Sir, if it was in forward flight, instead of the hover, in the first question, sir. Because
Yeah,
then.
first question you have to find CT, right?
Sorry, sir. In the second one, where we find the tip velocity, when we want to find the tip velocity, sorry. Sir, in that case, because in hover we can quadratic equation can be easily solved putting as lambda is equal to CT by 2 whole root. But when if it was given forward flight, right, for example, then it would have been very complicated. Could it have been solved with the pen and paper, sir? Then question mark.
That's why I mean, see, that's why I've given you a question which has to be solved by pen and paper, right?
Sir, this is my question, sir. Can we solve it, sir, with pen and paper, or we need to solve it with MATLAB only, sir?
I mean, with some approximation, you can even solve with pen and paper even then.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so you have to apply right kind of approximations at right points. Right, but the question paper was set up in a manner for you to be able to think clearly.
Yes, sir.
In this, see, this course, this particular course is all about, I mean, teaching you how to apply your knowledge. This course doesn't require you to memorize things because at such an advanced level, we actually cannot do anything by memorizing. There is no point of remembering formulas and doing things. Now you are going to be a professional. All of you are either doing MTech or you are a BTech student who may be doing dual or whatever, but all of you are going to be an engineer or are already an engineer. So as a professional, you have to learn how to use the knowledge available to you, the information available to you. There is too much of information. So you should be smart enough to see what is relevant for me and how I bring it and apply it for solving my problem. Because that is what you will be doing day in, day out as an engineering professional anywhere. Even if you become a researcher, that's what you will be doing. As a researcher, I actually don't memorize things, right? I actually learn new things and see what new information or new theory or new formulation I can bring in to solve my problem. Okay. So that is the objective of this course all along. And I have mentioned in the beginning also. And that's what I was trying to test you out for. That you are able to, whatever information, you have everything available with you. Right? Are you able to think clearly and cleverly to make use of it in the right manner? And you will get one more chance in the final exam. But final exam will be relatively straightforward. But and I have given you a very similar looking sample paper also. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right. So ball was completely in your court. It's okay. Don't worry about midterm exam. You tried your best, and I'll see. I mean, you will. It's not like you will get 0 for not getting the correct answer. I will see how clearly you're trying to think. So you will be suitably. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. So I have to leave now. Okay, I'll see you guys later.